bent backwards for scraps of approval. He was gone. The new me? He took himself out to dinner on a random Tuesday. He signed 2 new contracts with major clients. He took a trip to Vancouver just because he wanted a change of scenery. He started dating someone who asked him about his passions before his resume. Life wasn't perfect, but it was honest, and it was mine. Sometimes I wonder if they ever sit around the dinner table and realize what they lost. If they think about the lights turning off mid-birthday party, not just literally, but metaphorically. If they ever whisper to each other, "Maybe we were wrong about him," but I don't wait for that day.
My boyfriend of 7 years doesn't want to marry me because I'm an immigrant.
I finally gave myself
the truth is that I earn more money than him,
a chance
and he
to
can't
be
accept
whole.
that.
And that was enough. I'm Ryan. I'm 30 now, a tech entrepreneur living near Seattle. But this story isn't about success. It's about betrayal, family, and the moment I stopped choosing pain in the name of love. For 2 years, I paid my parents' electricity bill, their water, their internet, every month, on time, without fail. I never asked for thanks. I never expected praise. I just did it, because they're my parents, because I thought that's what love looked like. My sister Jessica? She was the golden one, the one with the birthday brunches, the Instagram-worthy gifts, the perfect smiles. Every time she brought home a new boyfriend, the family would fawn over him like he was royalty. Meanwhile, I was just there. I'm not flashy. I don't brag. I don't wear designer clothes or talk about my company unless I'm asked. I didn't mind being in the background, or at least, I thought I didn't. A few days before my mom's birthday, I called my dad. "Hey, I was thinking of stopping by. I got something nice for Mom. Thought I'd surprise her." There was silence on the other end. Then came his voice, cold, measured. "Ryan, maybe it's best you don't come." I froze. "What?" "There's going to be people here. Jessica's boyfriend. He's got a good presence, and I think you just bring the vibe down." That was it. No hesitation, no apology, just a quiet verdict. I wasn't good enough for their table. I didn't say a word. I just hung up. Then I opened my bank app and canceled every automatic payment I had set up for their household. The day of the party, I stayed home. I didn't call. I didn't text. I just watched. Around 4:30 p.m., the first message came in. "Ryan, is the Wi-Fi out?" Then, "Why is the power flickering?" And then, from Mom, "Water's not working. Did the city shut it off?" No one remembered that I was the one who'd been paying to keep their home functional. Not until everything started shutting down. Still, no one apologized. They just kept messaging, asking, demanding. It was Aunt Lauren who called. She didn't know I'd been uninvited. "Ryan, why didn't you come? Jessica's boyfriend is here. You two would have had a lot to talk about." I raised an eyebrow. "Really?" She turned her phone, showing me the room. There he was, Jessica's incredible boyfriend, Jason. I stared for a moment, and then I laughed. Jason worked for me. He was one of the mid-level engineers on a short-term contract. Good at his job, sure, but I was his employer, the founder, the owner of the very company that gave him his fancy tech title. I watched as the realization slowly spread through the room. Jessica blinked. Jason's face turned white. He hadn't told them, and clearly, either had she. They called again, and again. This time, they weren't just asking for help, they were groveling. My dad tried to save face. You should have told us, son. We didn't know. But that was the point, wasn't it? They never asked. They never wanted to see me. They wanted the version of me that looked successful, in public, without ever treating me with private respect. They wanted my money, my silence, my absence. So I gave them what they asked for. 2 weeks later they visited. No. How are you? No. We're sorry. Just this. We were thinking, since things are tough, maybe you could help again. Just $2,000 a month. That's fair, right? I smiled. I told them I'd match Jessica's contribution, or we could sign legal documents about future inheritance if they wanted to make things official. My father exploded. He called me ungrateful, petty, cold. I simply opened the door, and I said, I choose peace. They left. It's been 3 years. They haven't truly reached out, not without needing something. And you know what? That's okay. I've found peace. I've found clarity. And I've finally learned that love without respect is just control in disguise. I'm not angry anymore, but I'm also not available. Because I know now, family isn't about DNA. It's about mutual care, boundaries, safety. I'm no longer the silent provider. I'm the man who walked away and built a better life. A week later, I was in my workshop, sanding down an old oak table, when I heard a knock at the door. It was my parents, standing there with hesitant smiles and a store-bought cake. Ryan, my mother began. We thought we'd surprise you. It's been a while. I wiped my hands on a rag, unsure of what to say. The last time we spoke, they had asked for financial support, and I had declined. The last time we spoke, they had asked for financial support, and I had declined. We've been thinking, my father added. I gestured for them to come in. We sat at the small kitchen table, the cake between us. My mother looked around, taking in the modest furnishings. You've made a nice place here, she said. You've made a nice place here, she said. I nodded. It's home. It's home. There was a pause before my father spoke again. We wanted to apologize for everything, and we were hoping we could start over. I looked at them, searching for sincerity. Starting over means acknowledging the past. Are you ready for that?
I've just walked away from
They
a
exchanged
7-year
glances.
relationship.
We are,
Not because
my
he
mother
cheated
said
on
softly.
me, not
I poured
because
us
we
each a cup of
stopped
coffee.
loving each
The air
other, but
between
because
us
I
was
finally
thick.
realized I was never really seen as equal in his eyes. And that realization, it broke me more than any betrayal ever could. 7 years ago, I moved to the U. From Indonesia. I came for graduate school. I was ambitious, excited, maybe a little scared. Everything was new. The language, the food, even the way people crossed the street. But I was determined to make it. A few months into school, I met Josh. He was in my economics class. Loud, funny, kind of charming in a chaotic way. We started out as friends, then best friends, and before I even realized it, we were falling asleep on FaceTime and finishing each other's sentences. We became inseparable. Dinners turned into sleepovers. Weekends turned into holidays together. His mom sent me birthday cards. His friends invited me to game night. He said he loved how independent I was, how driven. He used to say I made him want to be better. After I graduated, I landed a tech job, pretty competitive, decent pay, and yes, under an H-1B visa. Josh and I moved in together. We were happy. At least I thought we were. We had talks about the future, kids, marriage, where we'd want to settle down. He always said we were building something real. So I believed him. For 7 years, I built a life around that belief. Through career changes, deaths in the family, COVID lockdowns, we held each other up. So when my company announced potential outsourcing earlier this year, I panicked, because as an H-1B visa holder, if I lost my job, I had 60 days. Just 60 days to either find another job, apply for another visa, or leave the country I'd called home for nearly a decade. I talked to my lawyer. One of the options, of course, was marriage. If Josh and I were to get married, I'd have a path to a green card. It wasn't how I imagined our engagement, but we'd been together for so long. It felt like a natural next step anyway. It wasn't just about the visa. It was about choosing each other, officially, fully. So, on our 7-year anniversary, I planned a quiet dinner. Nothing too fancy, just the two of us, our favorite takeout, candles, jazz in the background. Halfway through dinner, I brought it up. I told him about my visa situation. I told him I wasn't pressuring him, that I loved him, that I wanted to build a life with him. And yes, that marriage would help. But it had to be something we both wanted. I was nervous, but hopeful. And then, he said nothing. He put down his fork. He looked at me like I'd just asked him to donate a kidney. After a long silence, he said, "I don't think I'm ready for that. Not until you get your green card on your own." I blinked, confused. He added, "I mean, it's just, I don't want to be used. You hear these stories, you know? People marrying for visas. Used? After 7 years?" I thought he was joking, but his face was dead serious. My heart sank. I asked him, "Do you really think I'd stay with you for 7 years just to get a visa?" He didn't say yes, but he didn't say no either. That silence told me everything. The next few days were filled with awkward silences and half-hearted apologies. He said things like, "I just need more time. I don't like feeling like it's only because of immigration stuff. What if we regret rushing into marriage?" 7 years. That's rushing? I started to think back on our relationship. All the little comments I had brushed off, like how he always changed the subject when his friends got married, how he'd never posted me on social media, just in case work people saw, how he never once brought up visiting Indonesia with me, and worst of all, how my success slowly became something he resented. A year ago, I got promoted. I started earning more than him. At first, I thought he was proud, but slowly, he grew distant. He'd make jokes like, "Well, you're the rich one now," or "Why would you need me when you've got your tech money?" I laughed it off, but deep down it hurt. Money was never the issue for me. I just wanted us to be a team. But for him, I think it bruised his ego. It got worse when some of his friends made remarks. One actually said, "You sure she's not just sticking around for that green card?" And instead of defending me, Josh just laughed, like it was harmless. That moment stuck with me. Then came the breaking point. I asked if he'd consider moving to Indonesia with me if things didn't work out with the visa. He laughed, like I'd asked him to move to Mars. He said, "I can't just drop everything and follow you halfway across the world." And that's when it hit me. I would have done that for him, in a heartbeat, but he wouldn't even consider it for me. I suggested therapy. He said no, said he didn't want a referee in our relationship. I asked him, "What are we doing then?" His answer, "I don't know anymore." That night, I packed a small bag and booked an Airbnb. Just for a few days, I told myself, "Just to clear my head." But once I was there, I realized. I wasn't confused. I wasn't unsure. I was just heartbroken, but clear. Clear that I deserved someone who chose me, fully, without conditions, without fear. It wasn't easy moving out, but in a way, it was the first step I took toward reclaiming myself. I spent the first few days in that Airbnb, not really knowing what to do with myself. I barely slept, just staring at the ceiling, wondering where everything went wrong. I felt like I had lost not only my partner, but my sense of security. I kept telling myself it would get better, that this was just a rough patch, that maybe with time things would heal. But then, as the days turned into weeks, I realized something I hadn't been willing to admit. I wasn't just losing Josh. I was losing myself. The person who had once been confident, who believed in love and in the idea of us, she was gone, and I had no idea how to get her back. One evening, I decided to call my best friend from Indonesia, Rina. I hadn't spoken to her much in the past few months, distracted by the mess I had found myself in. I needed to hear a familiar voice. "Rina, I don't know what to do," I said, my voice shaking. I thought I was doing everything right, but now, nothing makes sense. She listened patiently, as I poured my heart out. "Ayu," she said gently, "you've been so focused on proving yourself to him, but what about proving yourself to you?" That hit me hard. She was right. I had spent so many years trying to fit into someone else's idea of what our love should be, trying to prove I wasn't just some girl looking for a visa, trying to convince Josh, and maybe even myself, that I deserved his love, his acceptance. But now, I was left wondering if I had ever truly accepted myself. The next few weeks felt like a blur. I went through the motions, working during the day, and at night, I tried to keep myself busy. I met new people, went out for coffee, spent hours walking around the city, getting lost in the streets. But nothing could erase the feeling of emptiness. It was during one of those long walks through the city that something inside me clicked. I realized something. I was still waiting for Josh to come back. I was still waiting for him to apologize, to make things right. But what I was really waiting for was validation. Validation that I hadn't made a mistake by loving him. It was a hard truth to face, because the truth is, I was afraid. Afraid of what it would mean if I truly moved on. Afraid of how life would look without him. Afraid that maybe, deep down, I wasn't worthy of a love that didn't require so much sacrifice. But the more I thought about it, the more I understood that love should never feel like a sacrifice. True love doesn't ask you to give up who you are. True love doesn't demand you prove your worth over and over again.
True love just is.
That night, I made a decision. I had spent too long worrying about what Josh thought, what his friends thought, what the world thought. It was time for me to decide what I thought about myself. The next morning, I started looking into job opportunities outside of the U. I didn't know where I would go, or how I would rebuild my life, but I knew I had to leave. It wasn't running away, it was reclaiming my power. A few weeks later, my company offered me a position in Paris. It wasn't exactly what I had envisioned for myself, but it felt like the perfect opportunity to start fresh, to prove to myself that I was capable of more than just surviving in a broken relationship. I accepted the offer. I made the decision to leave behind everything that tied me to that painful chapter. Paris was waiting. The weeks leading up to my departure were a whirlwind of emotions. I packed my life into boxes, all the while trying to keep my composure. But it wasn't easy. I'd be lying if I said I didn't second-guess myself every now and then. Could I really leave behind everything I knew? Was this the right choice? What if I was making a mistake? But deep down, I knew I had to do it. I had to move on, not just from Josh, but from the version of myself that had been holding on to a life that wasn't serving me anymore. The day I left the U was a blur. I hugged my friends goodbye, tried not to cry as I boarded that flight, and in the back of my mind, I was still wondering if I was making the right decision. I landed in Paris with a mix of fear and excitement. It was all so new, so foreign. The language, the streets, the culture, everything was different. But in a strange way, it felt like I was finally where I was meant to be. I found a small apartment in the heart of the city. It wasn't much, but it was mine.
As beis where I could begin again.
I settled in, unpacked my things, and started to explore this new chapter of my life. The first few days were tough. I missed home. I missed the comfort of familiarity. I missed the person I thought I'd be spending my life with. But then something surprising happened. As the days passed, I started to feel at peace. Paris, in all its chaotic beauty, began to heal me in ways I didn't expect. I would wander through the streets, taking in the history and the beauty of the city, and slowly, the weight on my chest began to lift. I remember one evening, sitting at a cafe by the Seine River, sipping coffee, watching the world go by.
My husband cheated with his
I felt the first real sense of calm I had in months. I wasn't running away from my past. I was embracing my future. I began to take life in Paris one step at a time. I met new people, joined a few social groups, and started discovering the things I loved again, things I'd forgotten about in the chaos of the last year. One day, as I walked through the streets of Montmartre, I realized I was smiling. Not just a small smile, but a real, genuine smile. I hadn't smiled like that in a long time. A few weeks later, I received an email from my old company, offering me a role in their Paris office. It wasn't exactly the promotion I'd hoped for, but it was an opportunity to build something new, to finally have control over my future. I accepted it without hesitation. For the first time in years, I was doing things for myself. I was no longer tethered to someone else's dreams or insecurities. I was carving out a life that was just mine. But I also knew that there was more work to do. This wasn't just about rebuilding my career or finding a new place to live. This was about rediscovering who I was, without anyone else's expectations weighing me down. It wasn't going to be easy. I had to confront the parts of myself that had been shaped by doubt and fear. But every step I took felt like a step closer to becoming the person I was meant to be. And no matter what, I was going to make this work. For me. It's strange, you know, how a city can make you feel both small and large at the same time. Paris welcomed me with open arms, but also challenged me in ways I hadn't expected. The hustle and bustle of the city, the constant movement of people, the languages I didn't fully understand. It was overwhelming at first, but with every new corner I turned, with every cafe I stopped at, Paris began to feel like home.
I remember the first time I walked down the Champs-Élysées, feeling the chill of the Parisian air on my skin.
It was surreal. My mind was still filled with echoes of my life back in the U. But in that moment, something shifted inside me. I wasn't just walking through the streets of a new city, I was walking toward a new version of myself. In the first few weeks, I kept myself busy with work, exploring the city, and meeting new people. I didn't want to waste time mourning the past. I didn't want to keep looking back at the relationship with Josh, at the life we had planned. I had to look forward. One evening, I met a few colleagues for drinks. We sat outside at a cafe near the Eiffel Tower, laughing and talking about everything and nothing. For the first time since arriving, I felt like I was truly connecting with people again. It was in that moment that I realized I didn't need to have everything figured out. I didn't need to be perfect. I just needed to keep moving forward. I started spending more time with myself. I would walk along the Seine River, watching the boats glide by, and just breathe. I didn't need a relationship to define who I was anymore. I didn't need anyone's approval or validation. For the first time in a long time, I was enough. It was during one of those walks that I began to realize something important. I was free, not just free from Josh, but free from the fear that had been holding me back. Free from the toxic beliefs I had about myself, the ones that told me I wasn't worthy of love unless I proved it over and over again. I was starting to love myself again. One day, I decided to visit a local art gallery. I've always had a passion for art, something I had put aside for years. I wandered through the exhibits, taking in the paintings, the sculptures, the photographs. The experience was so personal, so intimate, that I couldn't help but feel moved. That day, I bought a small painting from a local artist. It wasn't expensive, but it felt significant, a symbol of this new chapter in my life. Paris wasn't just a city to me anymore. It was a place of transformation. It was a blank canvas where I could paint my own future, and I was ready to start. I was starting to see myself not as someone who had been broken, but as someone who had survived. Not as someone who had lost love, but as someone who had learned to love herself. And that, to me, was the most beautiful transformation of all. As time passed, Paris became more than just a city. It became a sanctuary, a place where I could rebuild, heal, and grow. And it was in this city, surrounded by unfamiliar streets and people, that I found something I thought I had lost, myself. It wasn't just the Parisian beauty or the culture that changed me. It was the space I created within myself. A space where I could finally breathe without the weight of someone else's expectations.
As beis where I kult dream again.
I began to focus on my career. With the new job at the Paris office, I was able to throw myself into work, learning new things, meeting new people, and finally feeling the professional success I had always deserved. A few months into my new life, I started receiving messages from old friends and family. They were all asking how I was doing, how life in Paris was treating me. I answered their messages, telling them about my adventures and my newfound peace. But deep down, I knew that none of them could truly understand what I had gone through. They didn't know the struggles, the heartache, the self-doubt I had faced. They didn't know how much I had fought to get here. Then one day, I received a message from Josh. It was short, but it shook me. Ayu, I've been thinking a lot about everything.
I realize now that I hurt you. I'm sorry.
I was afraid, and I didn't know how to deal with it. I understand if you can't forgive me, but I wanted to say I'm sorry for what I did. I stared at the screen, my heart pounding. Part of me wanted to respond, to open up, to give him the closure he seemed to be asking for. But another part of me, the part that had been healing for months, felt nothing but a quiet calm. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. I had already given myself the closure I needed. I didn't need Josh's apology to feel whole. I didn't need him to validate my worth. I had done that on my own. I moved forward with my life in Paris, and though there were days when I missed the version of myself that had once been part of a couple, I knew I was better off without the relationship that had held me back for so long. A year later, I found myself at another cafe by the Seine. I was sipping a glass of wine, looking out at the river as the sun began to set. The sky was painted with shades of pink and gold, and for a moment, I closed my eyes and simply took it all in. This was my life now, and I was finally truly at peace. I'm not saying that everything is perfect. I still have days where the past tries to creep in.
The insecurities, the doubts, the what ifs.
But I've learned to acknowledge them and then let them go. I've learned that my worth is not defined by anyone else, not by Josh, not by anyone. And as I look forward to my future, I can honestly say that I'm excited. I'm excited for the next adventure, for the next chapter of my life, and for the person I am becoming. I'm proud of the woman I am today, strong, independent, and unapologetically me. To anyone out there who feels lost, who feels like they're stuck in a relationship or situation that doesn't serve them, I want you to know this: you are enough. You are worthy of love that doesn't require you to prove your worth every single day. You are worthy of a life that makes you feel alive, not one that leaves you questioning everything about yourself. And remember, no matter where you are, no matter how far you feel from home, there is always a way to start over. That's the end of my story. Thank you for listening. I hope that by sharing this, someone out there can find the strength to take that first step towards a better, more fulfilling future. If you've been through something similar, if you've experienced heartbreak and found the courage to move on, I'd love to hear your story. You're not alone. We're all in this together.
Hi, mein Name ist Victoria.
I'm 31 years old, and I thought I had it all. A loving husband, a stable job, a cozy home. The kind of life people post about with cheesy captions like my forever. But forever turned into fragments the day I found out Aaron, my husband, was sleeping with his personal trainer. Yeah. I didn't scream. I didn't cry in front of him. Instead, I smiled. Because right then, I knew, I wasn't going to just be a victim. I was going to be the sweetest revenge he never saw coming. If you had asked me a year ago, I would have told you that I was happy. Maybe not movie scene, fireworks every morning happy, but content, comfortable, safe. Aaron and I had been married for 5 years. He wasn't flashy or overly romantic, but he made me laugh, remembered my coffee order, and kissed me on the forehead every morning before work. He was a laid-back guy, the type to spend Sundays watching football in stained sweatpants with chips on his chest. I never minded. It was part of his charm. That's what made the shift so jarring. I still remember the smell. You know, that fresh, lemony clean scent that tries too hard to hide sweat and secrets? That was the first thing that hit me when I walked into Strong Body Private Coaching. I'd booked my free consultation 2 days after discovering the affair. I wore leggings, a cute sports bra, tied my hair in a high ponytail, and smiled like I had no idea my husband had been bending Monica over a bench press rack. And then I saw her, Monica, up close. She was everything Instagram promised and more. Tall, glowing skin, high ponytail swinging like she was in a Nike ad, and that body lean, strong, effortless. She walked up to me with a dazzling smile and said, "Hi.
You must be Victoria."
Ready to get sweaty? I smiled right back.
Oh honey, it hooked.
You have no idea. I played it perfectly. I told her I'd just gotten out of a fitness rut and needed someone to motivate me. She told me I was beautiful and had great structure. Vomit. Session after session, I let her think we were bonding. I mirrored her. I praised her techniques. I even brought her iced coffee once, pretending to be the sweet, bubbly client who was so lucky to work with her. Inside, I was learning everything. Her schedule, her routines, her weaknesses, her patterns with Aaron. And oh, did she talk.
Monica loved talking.
She had no idea who I was, or that she was bragging about stealing my husband. To me, you know, she said once, curling a dumbbell with one arm, some of my clients are very loyal. She winked. I played dumb. Oh? Like who? She smiled slyly. Let's just say, married men are often more fun. I laughed with her, but in my head, I was making a checklist. She's arrogant, she thinks she's untouchable, and she clearly doesn't Google her clients before opening her legs after a month of training. Things started changing. I was the one getting compliments. I was becoming stronger, leaner, more confident. Even Aaron noticed. He started acting different, more quiet at home, asking, "Are you seeing someone?" Oh, the irony. I told him, no, just focusing on me lately, which wasn't a lie. I was focusing on me, and my revenge. Then came my favorite part of the plan, the dinner.
I invited Monica over.
I told her I wanted to thank her for helping me find myself again. I said, come for wine and dinner, no gym talk, just girl time. She agreed immediately, probably assumed I was falling into her orbit. I made sure Aaron would be home, but not expecting guests. I even told him I'd be working late. So when he walked into our living room and saw Monica sitting on our couch, wine glass in hand, the look on his face? He froze. Monica looked confused. Wait. You two know each other? I smiled, put my wine down gently. Oh, did he not tell you?
Wir married.
Silence. Dead. Cold.
Silence.
Erin's face went pale. Monica's mouth dropped open like a fish gasping for oxygen. I let the silence stretch, thick and suffocating, before continuing. Monica, thank you, truly, for helping me get stronger. You helped me lift more than weights. You lifted the blindfold off my eyes. I turned to Erin. And you? Well, you look ridiculous right now, standing there with guilt dripping off your chin. But don't worry, I've already filed for divorce. I pulled out a small envelope. In here are screenshots.
Evere message.
Every payment.
Evere little lie.
I smiled. Oh, and I've frozen our joint accounts. You'll be hearing from my lawyer. That night, I didn't cry. I slept like a queen, because revenge doesn't have to be loud. Sometimes, the quietest betrayals hit the hardest. After the dinner? After the confrontation that left both of them speechless and shaking? You'd think I'd be done. You'd think I'd want to move on, get a fresh start, find peace. Because this wasn't just about betrayal anymore. It was about accountability. You see, Monica didn't just sleep with someone's husband. She marketed herself as a female empowerment brand. She posted daily quotes like "Strong women don't tear others down," all while tearing marriages apart one barbell at a time. I wasn't about to let that slide. Her online presence? Massive. Thousands of followers, sponsored posts, brand deals with local wellness shops. It was all built on one lie, that she was a professional who helped women. Women, not slept with their husbands behind closed gym doors. I didn't rant online. I didn't tag her in angry posts or scream "homewrecker" in all caps.
EU setze screenshots.
The receipts. The voice notes she accidentally sent my husband once while clearly drunk and bragging about her client connections. I created an anonymous account at Truth Barbells, posted receipts, blurred names, but left enough detail for those who knew her to start whispering. Then I DM'd 5 of her brand partners. Hey, just thought you might want to be aware of this. Not sure if it aligns with your values. I didn't tell them what to do. I just showed them the truth. Is this the trainer who sleeps with married clients? Wow, that's empowering. Really?
EU said to look up to you.
Unfollowed. Check out at Truth Barbells. Yikes. Monica tried to clap back. Posted a vague story. Jealousy is a disease. Get well soon. Oh sweetie, this wasn't jealousy. This was justice. In the next 2 weeks, 3 sponsorships dropped her. 2 of her high-profile clients left. Her 5-star reviews tanked, and her gym quietly removed her from their featured trainers page. I didn't have to lie. I didn't have to do anything illegal. I just let the truth breathe, and watched her whole empire collapse under the weight of her own ego. One night, I got a text from Erin. I don't even recognize you anymore.
You shanget.
I stared at it for a second, then typed back, "No, Erin, I just found myself. The person you didn't deserve." Then I blocked him. It took a while. Healing isn't a straight line. Some nights, I still wake up angry. Some mornings, I remember how badly it hurt to be lied to by the man I loved. But then I look around. I've started over.
Ivy built so meeting mine.
And the best part? I didn't let them break me. I used their betrayal as fuel, and I turned it into power. If you're listening to this and someone has betrayed you, hear me. You don't have to scream to be heard.
You don't have to destroy yourself for revenge.
Sometimes, the quietest moves are the most dangerous.
And the calmest women?
We're the ones they should have never underestimated. So no, I didn't ruin their lives. They handed me the matches.
I just lit the truth on fire.
It's funny, isn't it?
How rock bottom can feel like freedom?
In the weeks after I exposed Erin and Monica, I moved out. I didn't pack everything. Just what mattered. My books, my journals, a photo of my late grandma, and my espresso machine. I left the house to him. Let him sit in the silence he created. Let him sleep in the bed where he whispered lies. I rented a small loft apartment on the edge of town. High ceilings, exposed brick, lots of light. I remember walking in that first day with nothing but 2 suitcases and a bottle of wine. And I felt light. I started going to therapy. I needed to unpack not just the betrayal, but the version of myself that accepted less for so long. And wow, I learned so much. About boundaries, about self-worth, about how loving someone isn't a license to lose yourself in the process. I started doing things just for me. I took a pottery class, started jogging again. I traveled solo to Italy and ate pasta in a tiny alley in Florence, where no one knew my name, and I loved it. People think revenge is fire and fury, but real revenge? It's peace, it's success, it's walking past someone who broke you, and realizing they no longer have that power. Aaron reached out again.
A long message this time.
Regret, nostalgia. He missed what we had. I didn't respond. I didn't need to, because closure doesn't come from the people who hurt you. It comes when you no longer need their apology to move on. Eventually, I started telling my story, not for pity, not for praise, but because I knew. Somewhere out there, another woman was sitting in the same storm I was once in, wondering if she was crazy or dramatic or too much. If that's you, I want to say this: you're not too much. You're finally enough. Just for yourself. And if someone cheats, lies or tears you down, that's not your failure. It's their reflection. So yes, my husband cheated on me with his personal trainer. And yes, I smiled, trained with her, and let karma do its thing. But the real win wasn't revenge. It was me, rising, rebuilding, becoming the version of myself I lost while trying to love someone who couldn't even love me honestly.
This is my story.
Not of betrayal, but of becoming unstoppable. I found tampons in my husband's car, the shocking truth that changed everything. There are moments in life when you just wish you're dreaming, that if you just close your eyes, count to 3, everything will go back to the way it was. I used to have a life that many people thought was perfect: a loving husband, 2 adorable little girls, a cozy little house, and Sunday mornings filled with laughter. I'm a 29-year-old woman, married to my 30-year-old husband for 4 years. We met when I graduated from college, and he was starting his first job. Everything happened quickly, but I never doubted him. He was always the one who made me feel safe, loved, and trusted. But just a month ago, everything collapsed, because of one tiny thing, a tampon. And it wasn't mine. That day, I was cleaning my husband's car, a very normal task. I was gathering empty water bottles, picking up scraps of paper from the car to take them to the trash, when I found it, a tampon, unused, sitting in the sunglasses compartment. I froze. I don't use that kind. I had never used that kind. And my first feeling wasn't anger. It was paralysis, a vague fear, as if my body knew something was wrong before my mind could catch up. I brought it inside, placed it on the table, waiting for him to come home. When he walked in and saw the tampon, he laughed. He said, "What's the big deal?" "It's probably from someone who rode with me to a meeting or lunch." I asked who. He shrugged. "You know, I sometimes drive female colleagues around." His response, so light, indifferent, made me feel like I was going crazy. I wanted to believe him. I really did, but I couldn't. The next few days, I found myself living in the dark. I started noticing everything: the sound of his phone vibrating, the time he came home, the way he looked at me. Nothing felt the same anymore. I asked myself, am I just being paranoid? Am I making a big deal out of a tampon? Then a week later, I found another one, in my sock drawer. By then, I wasn't numb anymore. I was cold.
A shying feeling crawled up my spine.
Why was it there? Why, if he had someone else, would they come into my room, into my drawer? I began to feel afraid, not just that my husband might be cheating, but that something dangerous was happening. Right? I couldn't believe it, not because he had a sister with a troubled past, everyone has a past, but because he chose to hide it from me. He allowed someone unstable to enter our home, to be around our kids, and didn't say a word. I even wished that he had been unfaithful, because at least that would have been between 2 adults. But this was a betrayal of everything I loved most. I used to think the worst pain in life was being betrayed by the person you love. But no, the greatest pain is realizing that person is willing to risk your children's safety, just to cover up a secret they can't face. That night, I didn't scream. I didn't yell. I just asked him one question: why did you hide it from me? He looked at me, unblinking. Then he said, "I knew you wouldn't understand. She needs help. I couldn't abandon her again."
He understood.
I really did. Family ties are hard to break, but I couldn't understand why he'd chosen to hide it, why he'd let someone unstable come into our home, a home with young children. I asked him, "Has she been around the kids?" He stayed silent, then nodded. I felt like someone punched me in the chest. I couldn't breathe. My throat closed, and tears just fell without me being able to stop them. "Don't worry, I haven't let her near them," he swore. Swore? At that moment, I couldn't believe in any promises anymore. I couldn't keep living like this. I couldn't put my children at risk. I'm a mother. My responsibility is to protect them, even if that means leaving the man I once loved. I told him, you need to move out. Temporarily. You need time to think. He reacted violently. You can't do this. This is my home too. But I was prepared. I had called a lawyer. I had called my mom. And I had called the police, to legally document my request for him to leave while I filed for divorce. The days after that were the longest of my life. I couldn't eat. I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying in my mind the image of her walking into my home like she owned it. And my daughter, little Anna, only 5 years old, asked me, Mom, who is that lady with messy hair? Why is she in my room?
Together, Mayat breaking.
I didn't know what she'd done, what she'd said to my child. I didn't know if I had already allowed my daughter to be hurt without even knowing. I started taking the kids to therapy. Luckily, there were no major signs of trauma, but the doctor said, the most important thing is a safe, stable environment. And honesty. I had no other choice but to move forward alone. I filed for divorce. My husband, no, the man who used to be my husband, he didn't agree. He counterfiled, asking for custody of the kids, saying I was being too suspicious, that I was overreacting, that I hated his sister for no good reason. I had to sit there, hands clenched, back straight, not crying, even though I wanted to scream. I clearly remember every word from my lawyer. We don't need emotions. We need evidence. And I had plenty of it.
The ring doorbell video.
The therapist's report. Texts between me and my husband. Images of the tampons found in the house. I didn't need to say much. The truth was crystal clear. I won primary custody of the kids. I kept the house. I demanded he undergo family counseling and regular psychological evaluations if he wanted to visit the children. I didn't do it out of anger. I did it for the kids, because they needed a strong mother and a safe environment. And I knew, from the moment I discovered the first tampon, I would never return to the naivety I once had. If you're listening to this, maybe you've doubted yourself too.
Maybe you've hurt.
Maybe you've been told you're too emotional, or too much.
Trust your instinct.
A woman's instincts, they're never wrong.
Don't let anyone make you question yourself.
I think back to the day I found that tampon in his car. It seems like a small thing, doesn't it? But it was the spark that set everything ablaze. It was the one thread I pulled, and suddenly, the whole fabric of my life unraveled. That tiny piece of evidence, the thing I couldn't ignore, turned into a whirlwind that carried me into a world I never imagined I'd be a part of. The hardest part about all of this wasn't the discovery itself. No, the hardest part was realizing I wasn't the person I thought I was. I wasn't just the wife. I wasn't just the mother. I was now a woman who had to fight for herself, her children, and her peace of mind. I had to ask myself some difficult questions. Questions like, why didn't I notice earlier? How could I have missed it? And the hardest one of all, am I a failure as a wife and mother because of this? But then I reminded myself, it's not about what I missed. It's about what I'm choosing to do now. The choices I make from this point forward are mine, and I have the power to rewrite the story. The court battles, the endless legal meetings, the emotional toll, it all took a toll on me, more than I anticipated. I had moments when I wondered if it would ever end. The back and forth, the legal jargon that felt like a foreign language, the constant reminders of the pain I was enduring. Every step felt like I was dragging my feet through mud. But there were moments of clarity too. Moments when I looked at my daughters and saw them safe, smiling, and surrounded by love. They were why I was fighting. They were the light at the end of the tunnel. During this time, I started to heal in ways I hadn't expected. It wasn't just about the divorce. It was about learning to trust myself again. It was about realizing that I am worthy of respect, of honesty, of a love that doesn't come with strings attached. It's about rediscovering the woman I had been before the doubt, before the betrayal, before the heartache. I realized something else too. I'd been living my life for someone else. I'd been molding myself into the woman he wanted me to be. I'd lost parts of myself along the way in order to be the perfect wife. But I don't have to be that anymore. The woman I am today is different.
She's stronger.
She's wiser. She knows her worth. And she's not afraid to stand up for herself, for her children, and for the future she's building on her own. I remember the moment I finally found peace. It wasn't when the judge ruled in my favor. It wasn't when I got the house. It wasn't even when I signed the final papers. It was when I realized I was no longer afraid of being alone. I had survived the worst of it. I had faced my greatest fear, being abandoned, betrayed, and left to pick up the pieces. But I was still here. and I was still strong. To anyone out there who's going through something similar, you are not alone. You are not crazy for questioning things that feel off. Your instincts are there for a reason. Trust them. Don't let anyone tell you your feelings are invalid or that you're overreacting. You are worthy of honesty. You are worthy of love. You are worthy of peace. I want to share with you what I've learned from this painful journey. The first lesson: never ignore the red flags. If something doesn't feel right, it probably isn't. Trust yourself and don't let anyone make you feel like you're overthinking things. The second lesson: your worth is not tied to someone else's actions. It doesn't matter if he's the one who hurt you. It's about how you choose to move forward, how you choose to reclaim your life.
And the third lesson: protect your peace.
That's the most precious thing you'll ever have. Don't let anyone steal it from you. As I stand here today, looking back on everything I've been through, I feel a sense of calm wash over me. It's not just that the storm is over. It's that I've learned how to dance in the rain.
I vil ir ned out to stand tall, even when the world around me feel like it's falling apart. And for my children,
I've learned how to show them that no matter what happens, we can always find a way to be okay, to be strong, to move forward, because that's what we do. We move forward. This is my story. A story of betrayal, pain, and ultimately, resilience. But it's not just my story. It's a story that so many people share. And if you're out there listening, feeling like you're in the same place I was, just know that you have the strength to get through it. You don't have to do it alone. Reach out. Talk to someone. Take one step at a time.
and remember, you deserve a pin.
You deserve peace. You deserve the life you've always dreamed of. Thank you for listening to my journey. As time went on, I found myself becoming stronger in ways I never expected. There were days when I could hardly get out of bed, when the weight of the divorce and the heartbreak seemed like too much to bear. But then I looked at my daughters, their innocent faces, their trust in me, their unconditional love, and I realized that I couldn't afford to let the darkness consume me. In the months that followed, I started to rebuild my life piece by piece. It wasn't easy. In fact, it was the hardest thing I've ever done. But I realized that no one can take away my power unless I let them. The life I had with my husband is gone, but that doesn't mean the love I had for my children, for myself, is gone too. I began to find joy in the small things again. The sound of my daughters laughing as we baked cookies together, the warmth of our family dinners, the way they hugged me and told me they loved me. Those moments filled me with a sense of gratitude, and slowly, they helped me heal. But more than that, I found something I didn't expect: forgiveness. Not for my husband, not for his sister, but for myself. I had spent so much time blaming myself for what happened, for not seeing the signs earlier. But I came to realize that I couldn't keep living in the past. The choices I made, the person I became, were all part of my journey, and I had to let go of the guilt, the shame, and the anger. Forgiveness wasn't for them. It was for me. And then, something incredible happened. One evening, while I was picking my daughters up from school, a woman came up to me. She was a single mother, just like me. Her eyes were tired, but kind. She asked if I had a minute to talk, and we sat down at a nearby park bench. We shared our stories, both of us finding strength in the other's words. She told me that, after a painful breakup, she had lost faith in ever finding real love again. But she had learned to put herself first, to build a life for her children, and in doing so, she found peace. Her story inspired me.
Itremended me det amno talon indis.
There are countless women out there, facing similar battles, fighting for their families, fighting for their peace of mind. We are stronger than we realize. That conversation with her sparked something inside me. It made me realize that this chapter of my life, as painful as it's been, doesn't define me. It's just a part of my story. A story that will continue to unfold with new opportunities, new relationships, and a new sense of self-worth. I started focusing on what I wanted for my future, not just for myself, but for my daughters too. I wanted them to grow up knowing that no matter what happens in life, they have the power to rise above it, that they can choose their own path, and they can create a life filled with love, respect, and joy. And in the midst of all this healing, I made a promise to myself. I promised that I would never settle again. I would never accept anything less than the love, respect, and trust that I deserve. I would never allow myself to be gaslighted, manipulated, or made to feel like I wasn't enough. I am enough, just as I am. For the first time in years, I feel free. Free from the chains of fear, free from the weight of betrayal, free from the past. I've taken back control of my life, and with every day that passes, I become more and more the woman I was always meant to be. If there's one thing I want you to take away from my story, it's this: You are not broken. You are not defined by the pain you've experienced. You are not a victim of someone else's choices. You are a survivor. You are a fighter. And you have the power to rebuild your life, stronger and more beautiful than before. I look at my daughters now, and I see strength in their eyes. I see the same resilience in them that I found in myself. And I know deep down that this experience, as painful as it was, taught me the most important lesson of all. You are never truly alone. There are people who will stand by you, who will help you rise when you fall, and who will remind you that you are worthy of all the love and happiness the world has to offer. So to anyone out there who feels like they're drowning in their pain, in their fear, in their uncertainty, please hear me when I say this: you will rise. You will heal. And one day, you will look back at this moment and realize that it was the turning point in your life. This is not the end of your story. It's just the beginning. Thank you for listening, for walking this journey with me. And remember, no matter where you are in life, you are always worthy of love, peace, and happiness. As I sit here today, reflecting on everything that has happened, I'm amazed at how far I've come. It's been a long road, filled with twists and turns I never saw coming. And while I would never wish this kind of pain on anyone, I can't help but feel proud of the person I've become. I've learned more about myself in the past year than I thought possible. I've discovered my strength, my resilience, and my ability to stand tall even in the face of betrayal. And I've learned to forgive, not because they deserve it, but because I deserve peace. I deserve to move on without carrying the weight of anger and resentment. I've rebuilt my life, piece by piece, and in doing so, I've found a new sense of purpose. I've rediscovered who I am outside of being a wife, outside of being a mother. I'm a woman with dreams, with goals, and with a future that is entirely in my hands. For the first time in a long time, I'm excited about what comes next. I'm no longer bound by the fear of being abandoned. I'm no longer tethered to the idea of what my life was supposed to look like. I've broken free from the chains of the past, and now, I'm walking toward a future that's full of possibilities. It's not just about surviving anymore. It's about thriving. It's about creating a life that reflects the woman I've become, strong, confident, and unapologetically myself. To all the women out there who feel like they've been knocked down, who feel like their world is crumbling, please know that you have everything you need to rise. You have the strength, the courage, and the resilience to rebuild your life. It won't be easy, but I promise you, it will be worth it. And to those of you who are facing similar betrayals, know this: your pain is real, but it doesn't define you. The story isn't over yet. You are more than this moment. You are more than the hurt you've experienced. The future is still ahead of you, and it is full of light. As for me, I'll keep moving forward. I'll keep fighting for my peace, my children's happiness, and for the future we're building together. I will continue to love myself, to trust myself, and to honor my journey. I have no idea what the future holds, but I know one thing for sure: I will never let anyone dim my light again. No one will ever make me feel small, invisible, or unworthy. I will keep shining, keep thriving, and keep living. Thank you for sharing this part of my journey with me. If you've learned anything from my story, let it be this: you are capable of overcoming anything. No matter what you're going through, no matter how dark it seems, you have the strength to keep going. And one day, you'll look back and see how far you've come. You'll see the woman you've become, and you'll be proud of her. You'll know that you made it through the storm, and you came out stronger on the other side.
Sautez qu'a dit Brice, stand tall, and keep moving forward.
The best is yet to come.
My brother ruined my life, then asked for help after I inherited $2 million. Now, years later, I'm in a better place. I'm no longer the person who cowers in the shadow of my brother. I've found my strength, my worth, and I've learned that family is not just about blood. It's about the people who choose to stand by you, who choose to love you unconditionally, no matter what. David may have ruined my life, but in the end, he couldn't destroy my future. And for that, I'm thankful. Thank you for listening to my story. Remember, no matter how deep the betrayal, you always have the power to reclaim your life.
Stay strong, and never let anyone make you feel less than you are.
Imagine growing up in a family where your existence felt like a shadow, constantly overshadowed by someone you loved, your brother. You'd think that family should be a place of support, love, and safety. But for me, it was a constant battle, a battle where I never stood a chance. I was always in the background, never good enough, always in the shadow of David. And as life would have it, that shadow only grew darker, especially when David betrayed me in the worst way possible. As children, David was the golden boy, the one everyone in the family adored. He could do no wrong. And me? I was the quiet, introverted one, the one who never caused any trouble, the one who always kept to himself. But no matter how much I tried to be invisible, I was never safe from David's cruelty. It started small, with cruel teasing and endless jokes at my expense. But over time, it escalated. He would push me around, make fun of me in front of our friends, and even come up with dangerous pranks, like the time he almost set my hair on fire with a lighter. Every time I tried to stand up for myself, my mom would laugh it off, saying, "Boys will be boys," while my dad was hardly ever around to notice. I remember crying out for help, hoping someone, anyone, would come to my rescue. But my mother always dismissed it. "David's just being playful," she'd say. My pleas went unheard, and I felt completely invisible, suffocated by this constant torment. But something changed when Dad finally started to see what was happening. After years of turning a blind eye, he finally stepped in. He registered me for martial arts classes, MMA. It wasn't just about learning to defend myself. It was about building confidence, something I had never had. For the first time, I felt like I could stand up for myself. Thanks to my dad, I started to change. I grew stronger, both physically and mentally. I walked taller, I spoke with more assurance, and I finally began to feel like I wasn't just the victim of David's cruel games. But still, the scars remained. I left home for college, desperate to escape the toxic family dynamic. I thought maybe, just maybe, I could find some peace away from David and the chaos he brought into our home. College was a new chapter, a fresh start, and that's where I met Karen. She was everything I'd ever wanted in a partner. Kind, beautiful, and supportive. Our relationship felt like a dream, but like any dream, it had its imperfections. We had our fair share of struggles, mostly because Karen wasn't always faithful. But despite everything, we pushed forward. We were building a future together, a future I thought would last forever. Then, Karen got pregnant. I was shocked, yes, but I was also excited. I wanted to be a good father. I wanted to give my child everything I never had. I thought this was the moment when everything would finally fall into place. But life had other plans. Several years into our marriage, Karen made a confession that shattered everything. She told me she'd been having an affair. The worst part? The affair was with David, my own brother.
The man who had made my life est fort à long à y coudre Mambé.
And to top it off, she dropped the bombshell that our son might actually be David's child. I didn't want to believe it. I had to know for sure. So I did what anyone in my position would do. I got a paternity test. The results? They confirmed what I feared. Our son was David's. My world, as I knew it, collapsed. Karen, my wife, the woman I trusted most, had betrayed me in the worst way. And David, my brother, the one person I never thought could hurt me like this, had done the unthinkable. I turned to my parents, hoping they would stand by me, but instead, they were just as shocked, just as devastated. They couldn't believe what David had done. My father, after processing the betrayal, made the hardest decision of his life. He disowned David, cut all ties, both emotionally and financially. He even changed his will. Everything, the $2 million inheritance they had, everything, was now mine. But David, he was left with nothing. And then, David came to me. He wanted help. He needed me. He knew he had lost everything and was desperate to get back into my life. He begged me for forgiveness, hoping that the inheritance would somehow fix everything. But I couldn't do it. I couldn't forgive him. Not after everything he had taken from me. I reminded him of the consequences of his actions. The betrayal wasn't just between us. It destroyed everything. And I wouldn't let him ruin my life again. It wasn't easy, but I started rebuilding. I spent more time with my father, and we began to repair our relationship. We'd spend weekends together, talking about life, about the past, and about the future. At work, I received a promotion, and I began to feel like I was finally moving forward. And for the first time in a long time, I started to heal. I began therapy, processing all the pain, all the betrayal, and working through the scars that still haunted me. Now, years later, I'm in a better place. I'm no longer the person who cowers in the shadow of my brother. I've found my strength, my worth. And I've learned that family is not just about blood. It's about the people who choose to stand by you, who choose to love you unconditionally, no matter what. David may have ruined my life, but in the end, he couldn't destroy my future. And for that, I'm thankful. Thank you for listening to my story. Remember, no matter how deep the betrayal, you always have the power to reclaim your life.
Stay strong, and never let anyone make you feel less than you are.
I never imagined that being honest, completely painfully honest, would be the very thing used to hurt me. They say the truth sets you free. But in my case, the truth set fire to everything I thought was safe.
My name is Emily.
I'm 28, and like many people, I've made mistakes, trusted the wrong people, and tried to find love in the middle of all the chaos that life brings. This is my story, not just about love and betrayal, but about learning to stand up for myself when I almost forgot how. I never planned to date my ex-best friend. It just happened, but it changed me. And when I finally found someone new, someone I thought would treat me differently, I decided to do something I hadn't done in a long time. I told the whole truth. About my past, about Adam, about Jake. I laid it all bare, because I believed that the right person would never weaponize my vulnerability. But I was wrong.
Let me take you back to the beginning.
It all started 2 years ago. I had just gotten out of a messy breakup with Jake, someone I'd been with for almost 3 years. He was controlling, emotionally cold, and slowly wore away my self-esteem with every passing month. Leaving him was hard, but it was the right thing to do. I didn't want to jump into anything serious after that. I needed time to figure out who I was again. And that's when Adam reappeared in my life. Adam was comfortable,
Familiar, et used to be my best friend.
the kind of friend who knows your coffee order, who shows up at your door when you're crying at 2 a.m, who remembers every little thing you said in passing. We'd never crossed the line when I was with Jake, but after the breakup, our closeness turned into something else, something I didn't expect. We started dating, and for a little while, it felt safe. It felt right, until it didn't. Adam never quite got over being just the best friend.
He could feel it.
There was this undercurrent of resentment, like I owed him something for not choosing him first. I started noticing little jabs, subtle digs at my past choices, comparing himself to Jake like he was trying to prove something. Eventually, I realized I didn't feel loved, I felt tolerated, and I wasn't going to live like that again. So I ended things. It wasn't ugly, it was just empty. And after we broke up, we went our separate ways. For a while, I kept to myself. I worked, traveled a bit, focused on my hobbies. I got better, stronger. I started to feel like myself again. And then I met Mike. Mike was different. Or at least, that's what I believed. He was easy to talk to. Supportive. At least on the surface. We connected quickly, almost too quickly, and something about him made me want to be completely open. I told him everything about my past. I told him about Jake, about Adam, how it all unfolded. I didn't sugarcoat a thing. And he looked me in the eyes and said, "Thank you for trusting me." He told me he respected me more for being honest, that he understood everyone has a past. I remember crying that night, not because I was sad, but because I felt seen. Finally. But here's what I didn't know. Sometimes, people pretend to understand you just enough to use it against you later. The first few months with Mike felt like a dream. He was sweet, attentive, and said all the right things. He'd leave little notes in my bag before work, cook dinner when I had a long day, and even remembered the names of my favorite childhood pets, things Jake and Adam never cared about. We'd binge-watch terrible reality TV, eat takeout on the floor like college kids, and talk for hours about our childhoods, our fears, and our dreams.
Il est misel folle.
Hard. I really thought I had finally found someone safe. So, on his birthday, I decided to do something special.
Something big.
Mike had been talking about the PS5 for months. He'd send me screenshots of limited drops and joke about scalpers ruining his dreams. I laughed with him, but quietly, I started saving. Every extra shift I could pick up, every dinner I skipped out on ordering, every little luxury I passed up, because I wanted to surprise him. I wanted to see that wide-eyed childlike joy on his face when he opened the box. And I did. The morning of his birthday, I wrapped the box with shaky hands and left it on the kitchen table with a note, to the man who reminded me how to smile.
Happy birthday, love.
Emily. His reaction was everything, or so I thought. Later that evening, we had a small party at our apartment. Just a few of Mike's friends. Some I liked, some I barely knew. One of them was Jessica. Jessica had always been a little off-putting.
Loud, brash, and the kind of person who gave off mean girl in disguise energy.
She never said anything outright cruel, until that night. She picked up the PS5 box with a grin and said, "Damn Mike, she must be a good lay to afford this kind of gift."
The room looked.
I didn't. I tried to smile it off, but something inside me cracked. I looked at Mike, expecting him to say something, to defend me, to tell Jessica she was out of line. He just shrugged. She's not wrong," he said, chuckling. "She used to date both Adam and Jake. Girls got experience." I froze. Everything stopped. The laughter, the clinking of glasses, the low hum of background music. All I could hear was my own heart thudding in my chest, and in that moment, I didn't feel like his girlfriend. I felt like a punchline. I pulled him aside after the party. My voice was calm, too calm for the storm brewing inside me. "Why would you say that?" I asked. He looked at me like I was overreacting. "Come on, babe. It was just a joke."
Don't be so sensitive.
Sensitive. That word again. That word they always use to silence women who dare to be hurt. But I pushed further. I asked if that's how he really saw me. Just some girl with a colorful past. Just some used-up version of the women he thought were more worthy. And he shrugged again, like he couldn't be bothered to even lie. "I mean," he said, "you have been around.
My briskogt in my troa."
That's when I knew.
The man I trusted.
The man I had given my heart to, had been holding on to a version of me that wasn't real. He didn't love me. He loved the idea of me. And he was waiting for a moment to twist the truth I gave him into something ugly. The same truth I offered him as a sign of trust. He used it to humiliate me. And suddenly, the PS5 I had sacrificed for felt like a monument to my own foolishness. I stood there in our kitchen, surrounded by crumpled gift wrap, leftover cupcakes, and the echo of laughter that suddenly felt cruel. My hands were trembling, not with rage, but with disbelief. He thought I wouldn't do anything, that I'd shrug it off, swallow it down, and pretend I was okay. Because it was just a joke. Because I've been around. But something in me snapped. Not the kind of snap that leads to screaming or crying in front of everyone. It was quieter than that.
More dangereux.
It was the snap of realization, of clarity. I went into our bedroom, closed the door, and stared at the PS5 sitting on the shelf like some kind of cruel trophy. I remembered every missed coffee I skipped to afford it, every hour of overtime, every small thing I gave up, for a man who saw me as a joke. And then I did something I had never done before in a relationship. I picked it up, gently, quietly, and put it back in the box. The next morning, before Mike even woke up, I loaded the PS5 into my car and drove to the store. I walked in, receipt in hand, and returned it.
No tears.
No drama. Just a woman taking back what she knew she didn't deserve to lose. Of course, the messages started coming almost immediately. "Wow, over a joke? You really can't take a little banter, huh? Mike's too good for you anyway." And my favorite, "You'll never find someone if you keep acting so sensitive." But you know what? I didn't respond, because I was done explaining why I deserved to be treated like a human being. Mike tried calling. He left a voicemail saying he was just joking, and that I embarrassed him by making a scene the next day when his friends found out I returned the PS5. He told me I made him look bad. That was the moment I realized, we never had the same story. To him, I was something to show off, a giver of gifts, a trophy that made him feel important. My past, my truth, my honesty, were tools he kept in his back pocket to use when he needed to feel bigger. To me, he was supposed to be safety, a safe place to rest. He was never that. So I ended it, not with a fight, not with more begging to be seen, but with a quiet message: "Thanks for the lesson. I'm done." He didn't deserve closure. He didn't deserve another apology. He certainly didn't deserve a woman who was brave enough to be vulnerable with him. I think we forget sometimes that self-respect isn't loud. It doesn't need to shout or throw dishes or post long rants online. Sometimes, self-respect is a woman calmly picking up a gift, putting it in her trunk, and choosing to love herself more than she loves someone else's comfort. The days after the breakup were strangely peaceful. Not easy, not painless, but peaceful. I stopped waiting for texts. I stopped refreshing messages to see if he'd apologize the right way, if he'd finally see me for who I really was. He never did. But in the silence, I started seeing myself. I sat on the floor of my apartment one night, surrounded by half-packed boxes of his stuff. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel ashamed of my past. I didn't feel like a thought. I didn't feel dirty or too much or used. I just felt like me. Yes, I dated Jake. He was my first real heartbreak. Yes, I dated Adam. I was lonely and vulnerable and still healing. And yes, for a brief and awkward stretch of time, I found myself in a weird space with someone I used to call a best friend. But every step I took, even the messy ones, taught me something.
Every heartbreak left a bruise that taught me how to stand tall next time.
People love to weaponize a woman's honesty. They love to take your past and twist it into something ugly. They love to make you feel like you're the sum total of who you used to love. But I learned that I am not my past relationships. I am the girl who told the truth. I am the girl who tried, who loved deeply, who gave generously, even when it wasn't returned. And maybe that's the part they'll never understand. I started doing small things to reclaim my space. I took down the framed photo of us laughing on the Ferris wheel and replaced it with a mirror, a reminder to see myself clearly every single day. I donated the sweater he loved seeing me in. I stopped wearing perfume that reminded me of him. And one night I lit a candle, made myself tea, and sat with all the versions of myself I had tried to run from: the heartbroken girl, the reckless one, the hopeful one, the ashamed one.
Haine du forgaveur.
Because she was just trying her best. Voice stronger now, sure, steady, proud. If you're listening to this, and you've ever felt like your truth made you unlovable, I want you to hear me. Your honesty is not a weakness. Your past does not make you dirty. And the people who try to shame you for growing? They don't deserve to sit at your table. Let them joke. Let them call room with their whispered gossip and smug little comments. Because while they're busy mocking who you were, you'll be busy becoming who you're meant to be. It's strange, the kind of clarity that follows heartbreak. At first, it hurts like hell, the kind of ache you feel in your bones, in your breath, in the spaces between each heartbeat. But then something shifts. You start to feel light again. You start to laugh, not the fake kind you used to do just to keep the peace, but real belly-deep laughter that surprises even you. And somewhere in that quiet healing, you stop asking for people to understand you. You just start being you.
I'm Ryan. I'm 30 now, a tech entrepreneur living near Seattle. But this story isn't about success. It's about betrayal, family, and the moment I stopped choosing pain in the name of love. For 2 years, I paid my parents' electricity bill, their water, their internet, every month, on time, without fail. I never asked for thanks. I never expected praise. I just did it, because they're my parents, because I thought that's what love looked like. My sister Jessica? She was the golden one, the one with the birthday brunches, the Instagram-worthy gifts, the perfect smiles. Every time she brought home a new boyfriend, the family would fawn over him like he was royalty. Meanwhile, I was just there. I'm not flashy. I don't brag. I don't wear designer clothes or talk about my company unless I'm asked. I didn't mind being in the background, or at least, I thought I didn't. A few days before my mom's birthday, I called my dad. Hey, I was thinking of stopping by. I got something nice for Mom. Thought I'd surprise her. There was silence on the other end. Then came his voice, cold, measured. Ryan, maybe it's best you don't come. I froze. What? There's going to be people here. Jessica's boyfriend. He's got a good presence. And I think you just bring the vibe down. That was it. No hesitation. No apology. Just a quiet verdict. I wasn't good enough for their table. I didn't say a word. I just hung up. Then I opened my bank app and canceled every automatic payment I had set up for their household. The day of the party, I stayed home. I didn't call. I didn't text. I just watched. Around 4:30 p.m., the first message came in. Ryan, is the Wi-Fi out? Then, why is the power flickering? And then, from Mom. Water's not working. Did the city shut it off? No one remembered that I was the one who'd been paying to keep their home functional. Not until everything started shutting down. Still, no one apologized. They just kept messaging, asking, demanding. It was Aunt Lauren who called. She didn't know I'd been uninvited. Ryan, why didn't you come? Jessica's boyfriend is here. You two would have had a lot to talk about. I raised an eyebrow. Really? She turned her phone, showing me the room. There he was, Jessica's incredible boyfriend, Jason. I stared for a moment, and then I laughed. Jason worked for me. He was one of the mid-level engineers on a short-term contract. Good at his job, sure, but I was his employer, the founder, the owner of the very company that gave him his fancy tech title. I watched as the realization slowly spread through the room. Jessica blinked. Jason's face turned white. He hadn't told them, and clearly, either had she. They called again, and again. This time, they weren't just asking for help. They were groveling. My dad tried to save face. You should have told us, son. We didn't know. But that was the point, wasn't it? They never asked. They never wanted to see me. They wanted the version of me that looked successful, in public, without ever treating me with private respect. They wanted my money, my silence, my absence. So I gave them what they asked for. 2 weeks later they visited. No. How are you? No. We're sorry. Just this. We were thinking, since things are tough, maybe you could help again. Just $2,000 a month. That's fair, right? I smiled. I told them I'd match Jessica's contribution, or we could sign legal documents about future inheritance if they wanted to make things official. My father exploded. He called me ungrateful, petty, cold. I simply opened the door, and I said, I choose peace. They left. It's been 3 years. They haven't truly reached out, not without needing something. And you know what? That's okay. I've found peace. I've found clarity. And I've finally learned that love without respect is just control in disguise. I'm not angry anymore, but I'm also not available. Because I know now, family isn't about DNA. It's about mutual care, boundaries, safety. I'm no longer the silent provider. I'm the man who walked away and built a better life. A week later, I was in my workshop, sanding down an old oak table, when I heard a knock at the door. It was my parents, standing there with hesitant smiles and a store-bought cake. Ryan, my mother began. We thought we'd surprise you. It's been a while. I wiped my hands on a rag, unsure of what to say. The last time we spoke, they had asked for financial support, and I had declined. The last time we spoke, they had asked for financial support, and I had declined. We've been thinking, my father added. I gestured for them to come in. We sat at the small kitchen table, the cake between us. My mother looked around, taking in the modest furnishings. You've made a nice place here, she said. You've made a nice place here, she said. I nodded. It's home. It's home. There was a pause before my father spoke again. We wanted to apologize for everything, and we were hoping we could start over. I looked at them, searching for sincerity. Starting over means acknowledging the past. Are you ready for that? They exchanged glances. We are, my mother said softly. I poured us each a cup of coffee. The air between us was thick, not with anger this time, but with unspoken truth. I need you to understand something, I began, my voice steady but calm. I didn't stop supporting you out of spite. I stopped because I finally realized my worth, and how little of it you saw. My father opened his mouth to respond, but I held up my hand. For 2 years I paid for your utilities. Not once did I ask for thanks. I paid because I cared. But when I was told I didn't look good next to Jessica's boyfriend, that was the moment I knew I wasn't family. I was a utility. My mom's eyes welled with tears. My father stared down at the coffee. And then I find out, I said slowly, that the guy you were all trying so hard to impress works for me. The silence was sharp. I didn't come here to make you feel guilty, I continued, but you came here to apologize and ask for more support. So let's be honest. My father's voice broke through. We didn't know how well you were doing. We thought maybe you were just lost. I nodded. And that's fine. You're allowed to misunderstand. But now you know who I am, what I built, and how I got here without any of you lifting a finger. Then I leaned forward. You want $2,000 a month in support? Fine, let's write a contract. I'll match Jessica's monthly contributions. Or you can agree to a formal arrangement for inheritance rights. Your choice. Their expressions shifted from contrition to disbelief. You'd make us sign a contract? My dad asked, jaw tight. I'm done with one-sided relationships, I said, even with family, especially with family. My mom stood. We didn't come here for money. We came here to say we're sorry. And I heard you, I replied. But sorry doesn't erase years of silence, disrespect, and exclusion. It doesn't erase being told I wasn't welcome. My dad stood too, angrily. You've changed. I smiled gently. Yes, I finally learned to put myself first. Without another word they left. I watched from the doorway as they walked down the path. The sun was setting. I felt no hatred, no rage, just clarity. They didn't call again, and for once, that silence felt like peace. A week passed, then 2, then 3. No calls, no texts, no guilt-laden voicemails, just silence. And at first, that silence was loud. I'd spent most of my adult life wrapped around the rhythms of obligation, checking my phone every morning for a "Can you help us?" text, dreading the late-night calls that always ended in "Just one more favor." Without them, the stillness felt strange, foreign. But then, it felt good. Quiet wasn't empty. It was freeing. I started sleeping better, eating better, smiling at small things I hadn't noticed before. The smell of wood polish in my workshop, the way the sunlight hit the old table I was restoring, the click of a finished drawer sliding into place. Life got smaller, and somehow bigger. I reconnected with an old friend from college, someone I hadn't talked to in years because I was always too busy. We grabbed coffee, then lunch. Then I found myself laughing more in one weekend than I had in the last 5 years. I joined a local makers community. I began mentoring younger creators. One of them, Luis, just 22, told me I inspired him to quit a dead-end job and start his own small business. I used to think helping meant sacrifice, that love had to come at a cost, that being good meant giving until you bled. But now I understood. Helping only works when it's mutual, when it's appreciated, when it doesn't drown you. One day, I got a message from Jessica. Hey, I heard what happened. I didn't know they did that to you. I'm sorry, truly. I sat with that text for a long time. I didn't reply right away, not because I was angry, but because I was thinking about whether replying would be for me, or for her, whether it would open a door I wasn't ready to walk through again. Eventually, I responded, thanks, I appreciate it. I hope you're doing well. Simple, kind, boundaried, because healing doesn't mean rebuilding what was broken. Sometimes, it just means stepping over the wreckage and walking towards something new. A few months later, something happened that caught me off guard. I got invited to a wedding, not Jessica's, not a cousin's, just a friend I hadn't seen in years, someone I'd helped with their resume back when they were struggling. They said, "You believed in me when I didn't believe in myself. I want you there." It felt surreal, not because I was going, but because for once, I was being wanted, not for what I could provide, not for what I could pay, but for who I was. At the reception, someone asked me if I had family nearby. I paused, not because I didn't know the answer, but because I wasn't sure how to say it. I used to, I replied, but not in the way that matters anymore. They nodded like they understood, and that's when it hit me. I wasn't missing anything. I wasn't alone. I was just no longer obligated to carry people who didn't carry me back. Love that costs your soul isn't love. It's a contract you never signed. Real love? It sounds like laughter with someone who checks in just because. It feels like sitting in silence with a friend who sees the hurt in your eyes before you speak. It's not transactional. It's not guilt-based. It's safe. I didn't get that from my parents, but I was learning to find it in others, and more importantly, in myself. I still drive past their neighborhood sometimes, not on purpose, just, it's there. Familiar streets, old grocery stores, the gas station my dad used to fill up at before church. There was a time those sights would hurt. Now they're just that, sights, not scars. And as I park my truck next to my workshop and step into the scent of sawdust and fresh coffee, I realize I'm no longer surviving. I'm living, truly, freely, finally, living. As the days passed, I could feel the shift in myself more than anything else. I no longer checked my phone anxiously. No longer held my breath when a family member's name popped up on the screen. I'd already blocked most of them, honestly. After Aunt Lauren's accidental reveal and the chaos that followed, there wasn't much more to say. The silence that followed was both deafening and freeing. It gave me space to think, to feel, to